Welcome, everybody, to another fantastic episode of. This actually doesn't have a show name, thinking about it. I haven't thought about that out loud until I just said that. Welcome to the FM podcast, guys. We're talking Final Fantasy today. Me and a very special guest I'll add on here shortly are going to be breaking down the meta, where we stand, and got 3 tournaments deep into Opus 19 because this meta just keeps changing and being something new and spicy after every Materia Cup, but we do love to see it. So if you're just joining us or just tuning in, I'm giving you a little bit of buffer time for me to just rant, let you come on in, get into the chat. We got KP saying elbow cough. I don't know what that means. But hopefully you're going to enjoy the show. And without further ado, I'm not going to banter anymore without having my very, very special guest, recent tournament winner again. Some say the main character of the Final Fantasy community. He hates those jokes, and that's probably the only one I'll go ahead and do because I'm going to be nice to Matt today. Of course, we have Matt Okimoto, current and friend and team member. It's all the first time I've actually had to say that out loud. That's weird. We're not in the same chats enough, Matt. Why are we the same team and I don't get any intel on this stuff?
Ask me.
That's fair.
You haven't messaged me.
That's true. That's true. You know what? 100% of my requests that I've messaged you on, I have gotten. So There's the backdrop. I was, where in the world did that go? Welcome, Matt. First of all, how you doing, buddy? I didn't even get to ask.
I'm doing great. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I'm catching up on a little bit of everything. After Kansas, I was like, you know what? I think I went too hard down the rabbit hole, and I didn't do so great. So I was like, let me take a break. I feel like that tends to happen. I don't know. When we're talking about weird superstitions, right? I think I can grind, and then I'll hit the first tournament, and I'll do good. But then I think I double down on grinding, and then I do worse. And then I'm like, I'm going to take a 2-week break. I'm going to go play Street Fighter 6. Let me go play anything else. And then I come back, and I'm like, I still love it. I still need to be in it. Do you have to go through these weird breaks at all or anything like that?
Yeah, I normally don't play the week I come back. I like to take a break. Obviously, with kids, right, and the wife, I try to focus on that the week I come back because my wife takes a lot of the blunt of the work while I'm gone. So usually the first week I come back, I don't really play too often. I might play once, maybe for a few hours, but most of the time it's just catching up on work because usually taking days off of work doesn't mean you actually don't have to do the work. It just means you do it another day.
Yes.
So I'm doing that, catching up on work. And then just spending time with the family, usually for the first week, and then I get back to the grind of like 2 or 3 days a week, sometimes 4, depending on how much the wife lets me out.
Right. And I think also depends on like what what the meta and deck is like. If it's like a stale meta for seeing like the top decks, we can kind of coast on that for a little
bit. I mean, you can theorize a lot of the stuff, which I had a few players reach out after the tournament, ask for like advice, and I'm like, you just talk to people, theorize stuff. Like, for example, going into the San Diego tournament, I played a few cards that I didn't even test. I just talked to KP about. He was like, I feel strong about this. I was like, well, you're giving valid opinions. You're a good player. I trust you. All right, let's go. Like, you can theorize stuff. You don't even have to actually test it. If you theorize it and the points are valid, you can just roll with it.
Yeah.
So
I think that
helps a lot.
That's been part of my curse this this whole Opus and this tournament season is that, since the beginning of this tournament season, I will say I'm very blessed to be in several now like Final Fantasy DMs at any given point with a couple of groups of people who I won't name because I don't want to share their content and details. But if you see me at tournaments, it's pretty clear who I'm probably talking to. But yeah, so it's been a blessing. But I think that our issue is that we're all on separate decks. So it's all just like, shit, bro, we have a Terra conversation over here. We're trying to figure that out. We got this other deck over here. We're all kind of focused on different decks and times. And then it's like, well, what do I want to play? And I'm like, I don't know. Now I've got 6 options. I had 3, but these ones are making valid arguments across the board. So
yeah, it's like too many cooks in the kitchen is a real thing, by the way. I try to, like, if I'm going to work on a deck for a tournament, I try not to involve more than a few people because too many opinions can get you to the wrong opinion, right? It's better. I would rather have the wrong opinion that 3 people agree on than the right opinion that 10 people agree on that took me 9 years to get to the conclusion.
Yes.
So,
yeah, I do agree. There's definitely, too many ingredients rolling, too many. Well, what about this card and that card? And you just have never enough time to like.
Yeah, you start second guessing yourself, which could make the deck worse.
Yes.
Like,
I mean, but to be fair, you're really a tournament player if you aren't second guessing the deck the night before.
That's true. That's true. If you're not changing cards the night before a tournament, are you really a tournament player?
That morning, you're like, nope. You know what? I slept on it. It's definitely 6 Hakana tiers. It's just across the board.
Most of the time, I do sleep on like hard decisions. I'll wake up and be like, all right, well, the tournament's in an hour. Let's go, because my gut feeling is usually what I'll go with, and my gut says this. Let's go with it.
You know, I'm starting to think, like, not to like get my ego going. I'm starting to think I'm a good brewer because my all my good luck, like the best showings I've had at tournaments are with decks that I'm like, I'm gonna build this. I feel confident this is good. It may not be the best, but I think if I just get paired up right, I can take it.
Mhm.
And then those are my top cut matches, other than like a Soiree one. Soiree, I was just like, it's good. Everybody knows that it's done. Like that's when it first came out, though.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are very good at building decks that
Yeah,
don't always put up tournament results. Like
right.
most of the time, the decks I play aren't decks that I come up with. Like being straightforward, I don't. I think I'm like a fine deck builder.
Mhm.
I'm much better at fine tuning a deck and like figuring out the numbers and the tech slots.
And a
I'm much
craft in
better at
itself.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm much better at that. Coming up with a shell or a deck idea, not so much. So
Yeah.
like I think everyone has their own like niche thing they're good at when it comes to building a deck. And there's plenty of deck builders who I've talked to that you'd be surprised. Like they may have not even topped the tournament, but to me that doesn't matter. If
Mhm.
there's a good idea, I want to talk about it, right? So
Right. No, something I was just talking to my good friend Shane about. You may recognize him as a Terra player from Florida, and he's out of Canada, so he's delightfully nice, of course.
Mhm.
But I talk with him all the time, and we were just talking about how we feel like that there's arguably not enough deck builders in the community, or at least vocal ones, so to speak, with it. And even if you're a good deck builder, it's like being able to be a pilot for that deck is a whole different thing, though, too. So.
Mhm.
You may have the like ingenuity to know the lanes and the ideas, but then you get there and you have to be flexible with what people present to you, and then it's like brain,
Yep.
because now you're too locked into what your idea of how this deck should be is, and if it doesn't get to the plan, well, now you have to improvise, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of get into the wash.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of good deck builders, but the issue they have when they pilot their deck and maybe they just think it's an immediate bad idea is they have a hard time molding to change. Like throughout the game state changes, the board state changes, everything changes, and your deck may be good, but you don't know how to adapt your plays for what your opponent does.
Right.
Right. I guess an example I can give is like I played Ice Earth in the top 8 of San Diego. Game one got really close. I almost decked it, but I was able to set up a Leviathan turn where I bounce Arcanus and go for lethal.
Mm.
But game two, I was like, well, the strategy normally works for like slower control decks. I just turned one Titus and started attacking and was like, I'm gonna put you to 4, then I'll get a couple monsters to play Leviathan and just go for lethal rather than wait till 6 cards on my deck and pray that works.
Right.
So stuff like that, you have to be able to identify, especially helps in a best of 3. But in tournament, you need to be able to identify that and make the adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some people do struggle with that, even if they're good deck builders.
Right. But speaking of decks and adjustments and all of that, I think that's a perfect transition into the whole purpose of this video and discussion, which I think is to get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of what in the world is going on in our meta, right? So we just wrapped on San Diego. Congratulations on another trophy for the Okimoto family. Much to people's love and sometimes dismay in chat, where they're just like, they're not even going to play it. That's but I didn't care. I was like, do we really want to see 50 cards against 50 cards? Like,
yeah, it would not have been fun for people.
Yeah, who burst? That's what's going to be like half the battle on it. But congrats on that. Obviously, congrats to KP as well. He got his day 2 pass, and everybody is very proud and very envious at the same time.
Yeah, he gets carried, gets passed down again, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kidding.
Let's see if we get him in chat with that one. But,
I'm just kidding.
So really quick, going in before I have as you know, I have like a little list set up, and we're going to do a little bit of a tier discussion, so to speak, kind of just to see how things are going. One thing I want to ask going into San Diego for you hit Mono Water. Now, what's the impression? Because my gossip theory is that you're pushing the narrative that Sildra needs to be banned, and you're a good enough player that you could run most of these decks that we're going to be discussing to a certain amount of success. So is this Sildra propaganda, or is this just actually like this is the deck that was well positioned to win right now?
Maybe a little bit of both. I do think Sildra is a little bit too powerful. I mean, if anything, this weekend showed it. If you look at all the Japan results, it shows it. You look at anywhere.
Yes.
Sildra is in a lot of the top 4 decks at any tournament in any region. That probably tells you something. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone's watched KP's latest video with Mono Water, but he goes over why Sildra is really good and like how you can get the 5 backups, by turn 4 with 3 cards in hand or an Echidna, or 4 cards in hand with no Echidna on untap. And just stuff like that, being able to realize like, oh, I can run a low backup count deck. Pretty good percentage. I can always start off with Sildra into more backups, and then by turn 4 be set up, which means every card in my deck is a live draw rather than sometimes you get in top deck mode and it's like, oh, double backup pass, Like that's happened a lot to people, right? So Sildra allows stuff like that to happen. So yeah, I think Sildra is a little bit, I guess we could say, overpowered for lack of better words, but it's up there. Also, I do think water was a good call specifically for this tournament. Going into it, right? It's not too long after Kansas where the Rydia Warrior Light deck won.
Yes.
You saw a handful of Leo decks. I don't think people will naturally just pick up Leo and play it.
No,
I
people
don't think
try to
that's a
play
deck.
Leo and they're like, this is there's more going on in this deck.
Yeah, I think people look at it like, oh, it's not that hard. Then they play it and they're like, oh, nah, I'm good. Also, with the fact that 13 is really popular, it's really good against that deck. If people are like, I don't want to just like have an auto loss in Swiss. So I didn't think people would be playing Leo. I did think a lot of people were going to be playing Warrior Light decks. I also thought a lot of the other players will start seeing the more Chaos Arc decks rise, especially with the results in Australia and other regions doing really well with it. So I was like, well, Mono Water is really good against almost all the Chaos Arc decks, outside the wind ones that spookily showed up, but I dodged.
Oh.
But yeah.
Wind in a water meta? Get out of here.
Yeah, I was able to dodge those, but I do think given the fact that it's got, decent, I know some people might disagree. I think it's pretty, 50-50 with Mono Order versus Warrior Light if both players are equally skilled. Maybe 60-40, maybe. Not by a big margin, right? And I think if you know the matchup and they don't, most likely they're not playtesting against Mono Water, so you're going to have a slightly higher advantage in the matchup for the Warrior Light decks. So I think just that alone was like, okay, I feel comfortable running it. Secondly, a lot of people were going to be running Chaos Arc to counter the Warrior Light decks because that deck's good against the Warrior Light decks, right? So I was like, well, I have a good matchup against Chaos Arc because you're paying a lot to cast Chaos against me.
Yeah.
And I can just activate a blue worm and give it to you. Something like you don't get a lot of value off of it.
Dies at the end of the turn anyway. So
yeah, so it's like there's not too much I have to worry about when it comes to most of the Chaos Arc decks. So I think it was just a good deck for the tournament. Will it be good in future tournaments? It'll probably be good enough to top cut. I don't know if it'll be good enough to win because the beauty of the Warrior Light decks, which I think are still probably the best decks in the format, is they can easily tech and modify their decks to handle whatever the meta changes to. So I don't think Water will win another tournament. It could. It's a very good deck, but I think people will they can easily adapt to it without too much hurting their deck.
Right.
Also, they have time to play test against it. As for before, they probably kind of like ignored it. And a lot of the water decks, at least in NA, were the Glaciella versions, which play a bit differently than the non-Glaciella versions.
Yeah, they're a little bit closer to like the Japanese mid-range ones that they were making rather than, kind of the JFB build, I guess we'd refer to it as for that we saw.
Yeah, that's where the one I played came from, was from JFB's build.
Right. So. Just another top tier player collusion at its finest yet again. I'm having an expose out of this episode, but KP in here with the big waves. Water gets you to Nats day 2. I'm so jealous. I still haven't qualified.
Stay hydrated.
Shit, bro, I gotta hydrate my way all the way to it.
Well, you're coming to Arizona, right? So you better be hydrated. That's hot there.
I don't know. It's temperature wise hotter than Kentucky, but Kentucky's humid and
it's not humid. At least the times I've been, it's not been humid. It's just hot.
Yeah, like I've been there once before and it was like 100. Honestly, I still take 100 in Arizona than like 85 muggy.
Yeah, I hate muggy weather where you feel sticky and
yeah, you walk through it. You just walk through the air. But let's go ahead and pull up some of these decks because I'm intrigued to see. First of all, I want to see if we even agree on these. We may just hard disagree.
Dun, dun, dun.
So here's our very professional notepad tier list kind of going on. And I want to kind of get into so how we're going to do this. We're going to go down the list of decks. These decks are in no particular order. And we're just going to kind of put them where we think of tiers appropriate. So for those who can't read this text, because it's a little hard for me to read, we got A tier up here. Tournament winners, no surprise, feel as though they have a notable strength difference between the tiers. Also includes influencing the meta overall. So Sildra will be a talking point for A tier, and this is something I reluctantly want to agree to because I like Sildra, but that's because I like the idea of what decks Sildra enables. That being said, I will recognize to say that Sildra is a little too strong for cards in print right now, but I'm of the balance of make everything broken, make an Earth Sildra, I don't care, make a Wind Sildra, maybe not a Wind Sildra. Wind has enough stuff, but give us an Ice Sildra, definitely. Jesus,
Ice could use some nice summons.
Ice needs something to get backups in the backups. So we'll be talking about Sildra here in a second. B tier, likely to top or win a tournament, consistent or strong decks, potentially good matchups against the A tier formats, but just generally less power overall. So I would say B tier in specific, we're I think a wonderful example will be something that is very likely to win a store championship or things like that, and still be topping, but we haven't necessarily seen him win just yet. Not to say that they can't, but it feels less likely. You'd be a little bit more surprised compared to A tier.
Yeah. And is this meta overall or NA? Because I feel like it's kind of slightly different in all regions.
Right.
A little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit.
I would square us more to NA just because
Okay.
it's like, I think a lot of people maybe don't keep up with Japan or Australia or EU as much as they should. I'm definitely a content indulger, so I'm oh god, you see me on Twitter liking every time Taruho posts an article or something like that.
Those are good ones, yeah.
Yeah, I know where to get my butter bread. I'm looking for all the tech, bro. To a detriment at times, because then I'm like, too many fun things.
I mean, they'll be pretty close.
Yeah.
But I think some regions, like our region, doesn't play wind a lot. So Europe
No.
wind a lot. So like that's gonna affect some of the deck.
Australia's a little too wild for my taste too. Like Australia metas is like, who knows, bro? Like
Australia, what is the Wild West?
Yeah.
I thought NA was the Wild West for the long time.
Nah.
Australia.
Australia be putting out some wild stuff, but based on your Facebook market things, that's like really your true stomping ground. So, but anyways, at the bottom we have C tier, which is not necessarily a bad tier, just potential to top and potentially win, likely to win a store championship or smaller tournaments. A little bit less tried and tested, maybe some bruise. Overall, just less shown strength compared to A and B tiers. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't beat a B tier, can't beat an A tier. Just a little less consistency on like what we've seen really pop off. So without further ado, I did want to put the first 3 decks be effectively the winners of the last 3 Crystal Cup or Materia Cups. Sorry, canceled it. But the last 3 Materia Cups, and right on top, Matt, you may recognize an Ice Earth Control.
Yeah. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'll go ahead and start on this one. So Ice Earth Control. I think what a grand start it had on Florida, and something I even talked with you really briefly in Florida was the idea of, do we think we're going to see it on repeat? And, I think you said something along the lines of, I think people are going to try to go play it, realize how hard it is, and then bounce on that. And we talked in general about the idea of like, there just not really being a lot of control players by nature in NA. But I don't think that necessarily neglects its strength. But for my money, I think I kind of landed in B.
I'm B with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Ice Earth has the tools to win a tournament. It doesn't do anything busted. But I guess for choosing it in the B tier as well, is I guess we have to put the region and players into it as well. I don't think a lot of people will play Ice Earth in general, but the ones that do will probably top with it.
Yeah, and I think a little bit you have to be kind of an Ice Earth loyalist to a degree, right? And I think a little bit almost like an Earth loyalist, because I think if you're an Ice Earth player, and I know you're an Earth Wind player, and I'll bring that up here in a little bit. If you're somebody who kind of just likes Earth fun stuff, effectively speaking, then that's something I think people just falling into Ice Earth, it just has a little bit of a different play style. I think it takes some time, and it takes a little bit more laps on the deck than I think people give it credit for.
Yeah, it's like a control player's like favorite thing, right? It's got tons of board wipes, it's got discard, and it's got poke. It just pokes every couple turns. So it's got everything a control player likes.
I think overall, though, I mean, the results speak for itself. So far, we haven't seen it win another tournament. We've seen a little bit of it topping here and there. You mentioned San Diego had a top. I don't remember if Kansas had a top.
It topped 32.
It topped 32. Deshaun, I know, played. And
I don't think it topped
16. Yeah, I think it might have dropped between 32 to 16.
Yeah. When we say top, we're talking about top 8. I'm assuming, right?
Sure. Yeah,
we're talking like top 16 because that's
I would say top 16 men. Top 32 was just kind of like a Kansas one-off, and people have feelings about that. So,
well, I think top 32, honestly, for this game, and people might hate me, I think it's fine. This game is like a casual competitive game. Like when you travel to events, you want to get the most bang for your buck, and what's most bang for your buck other than playing more games? I think. And like the better players shouldn't mind playing more games because they should win the more games that are played, right? Like, so I don't think it's necessarily bad. But I do get the consistency being an issue, right? Other events were top 16. That one was top 32. People could feel a little indifferent about it, but
yeah, if I was going to have a gripe about it, I would say that there's just not consistency across the board. But overall, if we all agree to top 32, I wouldn't mind that, so to speak, in the fact that I want more games. I want more games to play. People talk about variance in top cuts as well. They're like, well, if I get paired against 32, what domino effect and ripple effect does that mess? I'm like, but there's variance on top 16. It's variance all the same. You can't predict for how everybody's going to land. So I'm with you. I'd rather play more games. Now, that being said, the pricing is really 16 and up, so to speak, with it, unless the store does something special for 32. But yeah, overall, I'm kind of with you on that one. I'll catch the hate train with you, buddy. Like the top 32 is just more games and more fun, bro. I came to play. Like unless I hate the deck and I hate it all the way up, and then you're making me play more matches.
But that's your fault.
That's true. That's true. That's a player problem. That's not a tournament problem. Next on the list, in not the right order, but we're going to talk mono water. And I'm going to go ahead and put in parentheses, I put Leo in here as well, because Leo did make some top cut showings in Kansas. And I also just really like it because I want to talk about it. But we'll go ahead and start with what I'll call like original mono water first, which is more of what you ran, JFB build, if you will. You go ahead and start. Where do you think this lands right now,
Matt? I think mono water is still pretty well positioned in most matchups. Yes, decks can modify themselves to make it a little bit harder, but I would probably put there's no like B+ or A-. It's all strictly A, B, C.
It's one or the other, buddy. It's gonna hurt you. There's no.
I'm definitely splitting the Leo and mono water though.
For sure. That one.
Leo is.
Yeah, I definitely think
it's okay.
Leo's probably in B, whereas definitely originals.
Leo is like C tier.
C tier, brother. No. All right, we're gonna riff. All right, so can we agree that mono water currently is an A tier because?
Yeah.
I would say like
that's. Yeah, I put an A.
I would say
I think it's still very good at what it does, and it's got most matchups are pretty favored for the most part. I think you muted yourself, Dylan.
I did. I just didn't want the keyboard to be clickety clacking on the mic because that bothers some folks. I may just do it anyway if it does bother you. Get over it. C tier. Okay, here's my fight for B tier. It's A tier fun. It's maybe the most fun in the meta. Period. But I think if we're a deck that abuses Syldra efficiently, and it has again such an insane top ceiling of like results and things it can do, I find it hard to put it in C tier, even if I know it hasn't won anything yet and it's only kind of had some good showings in top. But I just think that anything that uses Syldra efficiently and good and has a good like explosive turn 4 onwards, right? I think is at worst at B tier for me.
So my concern with the Leo is there's just some decks that are just like unwinnable. Like 13 is pretty unwinnable for that deck. I think 13 is on average probably one of the most played decks at tournaments. Syldra is good, but at some point, not all Syldra decks are A or B tier, right? There's going to be decks that run Syldra that may not be the best. Like if there was a B- tier, I would put it there. But if we're going hard A, B, C, personally, I would put it in C tier because it can potentially top. It can potentially win. It could win a store champ. I don't think it would win a Materia Cup, and I would blizzard bet anybody on that.
Now I just want to run it in Dallas and see.
Especially because it's also going to get sidely hit a little bit with the other mono water deck being good.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think personally it's C tier, but this is your show. You're welcome to put it wherever you'd like.
I mean, one of us is a world-renowned Final Fantasy player who has had objectively 2 day 2 passes over, 2 tournament wins, and the other one isn't qualified for Nats yet. So I'll go ahead and give it to you on this one. We'll downplay Leo.
We can come back to it too. We can just put like a little note, like maybe we can come back to it after we talk about the other decks if you want. But
I think that if it becomes a discussion point for later, we'll bring it back up.
I mean, C tier is still good, right? C tier can still win tournaments.
Absolutely, C tier is definitely not bad. I think people will get their feelings hurt if they're like my favorite decks in C tier, and I'm like, bro, C tier can still win. But KP mentions in the comments as well over in chat, he said, I think out of all the Syldra decks that we know about, Leo is probably the worst Syldra deck.
Oh, dude, that's nice. You have that little like thing on the screen.
Yeah, brother.
That is sick. I was looking on the second monitor. Sorry, that's really cool.
But it is still better than a lot of non-Syldra decks. Yeah, I agree. I think that is, as a Syldra deck, it probably is on the bottom of the list. There's only but when your competition is the Warrior of Light deck, strict mono water, that's That's kind
It's
of
rough.
unfair. It's unfair, and this is
Yeah.
where I would split the hairs. But Matt's my guest, and you know what? Credit to Matt. I'm gonna respect his opinion on it. I'll put it in C, and then if I win with it, then I'll just get cash money on a bet for it. So
Yeah, you get a Blizzard.
yep.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
It's also nice to know that like KP probably is so sad that it's in C tier.
Yeah, right. Like, me and him are very much in the mindset that is a very, very fun deck. And fun decks, we just kind of wish we were just winning tournaments as well. But unfun meta, question mark? Anyways, Earth Water, specifically Wool, Fasuya, Rydia. We're talking, I guess, if you want to call it the Ghoul build, if you want to call it the whatever build. This one feels like a pretty easy A tier.
Yeah, I think for me, most of the Warrior Light decks fall under the A category. Almost all the ways you can build it.
Right.
I mean, specifically this one, there's so many different ways you can build it. There's so many different cards you can add to the deck to handle the meta, right? Like for monster decks, you can run 2 CP Prish, 5 CP Fenrir, 4 CP Alexander. For the 13 decks, you can go Aron, you can add Galoof. Like there's so many different things you can add that doesn't really hurt the deck, that it just easily morphs to whatever the meta is. So I think, yeah, this Wolf Soiree deck is definitely A tier in my opinion.
Is there ever an argument to put it in B tier? Hear me out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You just get 3 CP Heka and lose, right? Like that's the meme. That's what like everybody has kind of like simplified the deck to. But is there merit to that? Like, do you get?
There is. I was gonna get to that when we got to the backup Rydia or the non-Rydia forward.
Fair. So specifically talking in forward Rydia territory.
The forward Rydia territory, I do think is worse than the other Warrior Light decks, but it's still, in my opinion, an A tier deck.
Mm-hmm. Backup Rydia. Is that B or does it stay in A though?
Oh, I think backup Rydia is A, and strictly because if you look at the builds for both the forward Rydia and the backup Rydia can get to 4 backups of Earth, Wind, Fire, and Water, all 2 costs. So that means the entire backup line, for the most part, is non-hackable and non-fenderable, which means you can play Warrior Light. Mm-hmm. The forward Rydia version can't do that. They can get a Wind backup, a Water backup, and a Fire backup. The Earth backup is all 4 CP or higher. Unless, they could run the tech cards that are in the backup Rydia deck, but it kind of clumps the deck building for the forward Rydia deck.
Gotcha.
The forward Rydia deck is a little bit smoother when it comes to that kind of backup line. And I think that's why I would value the backup Rydia a little bit more consistent wise when it comes to backups, because then you don't have to worry about Hecaton or Fenrir in the mirror. You just get to do your game.
Right. Yeah, I definitely don't see an argument or a disagreement with that. I think for me, I think about the deck, and it comes down to a little bit of that fun eluding power level aspect to it, because you get ready up to 4 counters and you're just kind of like unga boonga, my dude, like let's go. Like
forward Rydia is more fun. I won't argue that.
Yeah.
But you get to add more tech cards in the backup Rydia version.
That's fair, and I don't disagree with that as a very strong strength, especially when it comes to flexibility. We'll talk about Soiree here in a little bit, but I think talking about what makes a deck good is its ability to have enough tech slots to shift gears and still hold its power level, right? So all right, would we say that the Rydia backup Earth Water is A tier? Would we put forward into B tier then for that argument alone, or would we keep that B tier?
I would keep them both in A tier. I think they're both very good.
Yeah.
If I had to order them, I would put the backup Rydia higher, but sure. I think they're both very good decks.
Okay, real quick, Mono Water over it, or do we feel like that?
No, they're better than Mono Water.
Okay.
Like if I was telling Brian Berkeley, if I wasn't already qualified with a day 2 buy, I probably would have ran a teched Warrior Light deck.
Yeah,
for sure. I think it's the most consistent, and the tech matters so much in that deck that you could modify for the expected meta pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. Or what am I trying to type here? Backup. People are gonna have to read this insanity later, and I'm gonna be like, "You're just gonna have to watch the stream and know what I'm typing."
You could just put enter, right? Like,
yeah, I could. I guess I could always type it up that way.
Yeah,
that makes a little bit more sense. Matt, you're so smart. Why are you so talented and so smart? So next up, Fire Ice FF6. If we don't put this in A tier, Chris Adams will be in this chat. I'm gonna let you take the ball on this one. You go ahead, Matt. What do you think?
I love my boy Chris. I love my boy Chris.
While you're stalling, KP said anything below C, Oki would put it lower. Things don't. I got you, boo boo. Yo, hit me up about Leo Tech though, KP.
I think FF6, while it has a lot of results at store championship levels, and I think in Europe it's done well in the Materia Cup, I think it was a much higher tier before people knew about the deck. I think now that people know about the deck, it's gone a little bit down, and I would put it in the C tier.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's still good. It can still win events.
Absolutely can.
But
Absolutely.
it's pretty narrow on what it does, and there's some matchups it's like super like auto wins, right?
Right.
It has like the Leo effect, where some matchups with Leo, you're like, oh, I auto win this, and then it's like, this one I don't.
So here's a quick question, because I meant to put a distinction on this: is Stooge build versus full monkey, machine gun Sabin, does that make a difference, or are they both very soundly?
They're probably both the same. I liked Chris Adams' version slightly better,
Yeah,
so he won't hate me too much for putting it in C tier.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're both in the same tier. And we're clarifying, C tier can still win tournaments.
It can. It's not a bad tier. It is still strong. It is still viable. It is still a great one. And if the stars align, then it is just as likely to win a tournament. Again, of the tournaments, especially in EU, this one keeps topping, and it keeps either getting like it got first on the first one, and then on subsequent ones, I still see it kind of coming out in their second or top four still pretty often. So
it's like one of those decks where, like I tell people all the time, Top Cut does require some amount of luck matchups, right? Like you can be good, but you can just have a bad matchup and lose. So doing well with Top Cut, you still have to have some kind of luck, which is why I prefer decks that are closer in percentages as far as like playing each other.
Right. Yeah. I will say playing a mono Earth Riku list, quote unquote, against into Lopez's very specific Ice Lightning felt real bad on luck on Top Cut for me in Florida, where it was just like, guess I just lose, bro. I don't know. Like you've got all the stuff to eat me up on that one, but I think you're absolutely right. FF6 is not in a bad way, but it's in C tier by definitions of it. We love you, Chris. Don't at me. Does it go under Leo? Ooh.
I can't put it at the same as Leo.
It feels a little.
I'm gonna put it above Leo.
You put it above it?
Yeah, not by much. It's
downplay. The downplay continues.
I just love making KP upset, so I'm gonna put it above.
Yeah, that's fair. Most things are better than Leo, but I also want to win with Leo. So,
hey, C tier can still win.
I can still win. I can still win.
You're welcome to play Leo.
Yep.
For a Blizzard if you win.
See, but here's my curse. Maybe I won't play mono Leo. Maybe I'll play like a Lightning Water, that Scion build, because it's less good. Hey, but we get to run Ixion in that. We run Ixion, we feel good against the 13 match. And then we go really wide with one turn Leo, and then we get wiped and we can do nothing about it. But it's super Oonga Boonga fun in the meantime. But let's move on. Final Fantasy 13, Fire Lightning specifically. I think this is a strong contender for C, but I think it could make an argument for an A tier.
Wait, you go from A to C? C to A?
I'm just fucking with yeah, I think this is unequivocally the best deck in the meta, purely on the influencing power of it alone.
Best deck in the meta?
Best. Listen, I'm not saying it absolutely stomps and wins everything, but I think if we're how I'm going to gauge it, and you can fight with me on this one. I think on influence power, this has been the most polarizing deck for people's like the meta stuff in general. This deck is so strong that wind has just not been here in this country for like half of Opus now.
I agree. I think it's very good versus like those type of style decks. But I'm still gonna put it in B tier.
B? Yeah. Oh, now we're okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay.
I think so. That deck is very good to top cut, and most people that ask me for advice, like, I just want to top cut. I want to try to get my top cut. I'm like, play 13. Yeah, it is one of the best decks to make top cut with. What you do is pretty unfair. Not everyone can answer it. People also need to draw the cards if they know how to answer it. They still need to draw the cards to answer it. It's just a very good deck at what it does. However, I think it's pretty like linear in how it plays. Like you board wipe it twice, it takes a few turns to recover, right? So like if after you get board wiped twice, you better hope they're at 5 or 6 damage. Yeah. But if they're at like 3, you're probably losing.
Yeah.
So it's like also going first matters a lot. This is a deck where going first versus going second matters a lot. So like if you make top cut and you're not a high seed, well, you're gonna start going second game one. If you're high seed, you get to go first. Yeah, your percentage is a lot higher. So that's kind of where I put it in the B tier because it's very good at what it does. It's very strong. It does warp the meta to some extent, but I think winning a tournament with all the other luck that's required to win a tournament, I think that deck is very hard to win a tournament with. I think it's very good to top cut, top 4. It can win tournaments. It just needs the right matchups going in. Like Pat, for example, is a prime example where he almost won, right? But look at his top cut. Top 8 was versus Leo. Top 4 was versus Leo. We already talked about that matchup. It's basically a bye. So
yeah, it's not fun.
That could happen for 13 and he could win. But all the other events, 13 kind of gets knocked out the first round, maybe the second round.
I wonder if is it ever worth, do we feel like that if it extends itself a little bit into mid-range? And I think it's like, so Fire Lightning, when we're talking about its game plan, turns 1 through 4 are largely the same no matter how you build it. You're gonna Ungo a little bit, you're gonna Bungo a little bit. If you're smart, you probably play 1 backup to kind of start to curve well. And you usually keep enough for exactly your point, 2 wipes, right? You're gonna get wiped once, but if you get wiped the second time, then that's usually their hard out. But is there ever a world where it pushes the A tier by adding more? I don't know, if we're talking mid-range style, something that comes to mind. I roomed with Steve Sauce from Cincy, and he ran a version that felt a little bit more. He played it in such a way that felt a little bit more almost mid-range by nature, right? He wasn't as aggressive on the first couple turns, but he can vanille out. He ran like 4 or 5 vanilles and a lot of recursion tools for that. Compared to what I feel like is kind of like the standard, what I'll kind of give credit to Eureka for, like the summon version that seems to be really popular right now. Does that ever push it over? Or does it still, do we feel like it's just kind of too linear and strong, but not strong enough to just kind of be in that upper echelon?
I think there is probably a build where it's like more mid-rangey that is good, but I don't think either build puts it in the A tier, in my opinion. I think a lot of the people playing the deck are just going to play it better, just playing the more aggressive version. There is some matchups where if you identify you need to play backups as the 13 deck, you can win.
Right.
But there's also matchups where you don't want to play any backups. An example is the mono water matchup. You never want to play a backup versus mono water because you're just giving them a Leviathan target. As much as it's like I have to pass this turn or play a backup, you just don't play a backup because then you give them a Leviathan target because then they just bounce to the backup, kill your forward. So there's matchups like that where I think if people identify it, they can push a little bit further. But I still think regardless of how it's built, it's in the B tier for me.
I think if I'm a 13 player and I'm playing against mono water, I'm already like annoyed with my day because it's just like I'm gonna swing and get punished for it immediately, aren't I? And then you do, and then you're like, okay, it feels good. But then you get that one game where you beat them and they don't get any bursts, and the one burst was already too late, and you're kind of just like, all right, this is the best deck in the world. But all right, I'll concede that it probably is in that B tier level until it takes that tournament. And I think there's definitely believers out there who are kind of just like, we're waiting for our time. If I'm a 13 player, I feel so teased. I'm either like getting more and more discouraged that this Opus goes on, or I'm only feeling more empowered that it's like, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one that finally tops it. I'm going to take the match for it. But with that argument said, does it go over Ice Earth Control?
Yeah.
Yeah, easier time in pools. You're not thinking nearly as much. You're feeling good by the time you get the top cut.
Yeah, I think it's definitely over Ice Earth.
Fire Lightning 13. Okay, so speed up the content. These next couple decks are going to go a little bit faster. Soiree. I take that back. This one's going to take a second. It's a deck near and dear to my heart. There's nothing I love more than busty anime girls and trading cards, and they put them all together and put EX on top. Feels good. That being said, you know what? I kind of want to downplay it. I want to put this down. I think this is a hard C tier. Fight me on it.
Nah, the C tier.
Okay, good talk.
It's above. I would put it above Fire, Ice, and Water Leo, just because it's one of those decks that can tech a little bit better for the meta.
Yeah,
like adding Firewind Zidane and stuff like that to the deck will help for some of the matchups. But again, it gets hit by the 3CP Hecaton. It gets hit by the Arcanist. By
yeah.
Whoa, you put it in the B tier?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah. C tier. Whoopsies.
I know you like the deck, my guy, but
Bro. It's okay.
I do think like I said, the decks in the C tier can still win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we've seen Soiree has won a tournament. I think over Europe or something. Yeah.
My argument with Soiree being in the C tier is that like the cards that I'm going to tech in Soiree, why don't I just tech them in the Earth, Wind, Rydia decks?
Yeah.
And just be better, like because they're going to be the same cards roughly. Like both decks can run the same stuff. The Warrior Light deck or the Soiree Warrior Light deck gets hit more by backup removal a little bit harder, but it gets rewarded because there's more EX. So it's a trade. I'm more of the opinion where I don't really want to build a deck just because it's got EX burst. If it does, cool, like bonus. But I'd rather just play
the cake. Yeah,
I'd rather just play better cards. But I do think Soiree is still a fine deck. It can win a store championship for sure. Very good deck to win a store championship. I would even put it at B tier to win a store championship. But if we're talking strictly Materia Cups, I think it gets a little bit harder for that deck to tech for a wider meta.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you on the idea of sitting here and saying it's just Earth, Water, like the Wool Rydia stuff without actually being Earth, Water, Wool Rydia, right? Like you're trading in some of the other cards for a little bit more, I guess I would say aggressive power objectively, right? If we're talking about Meryl's kind of having outs and things like that. But there's a point of saying like the more Soiree it becomes, the worse it gets. So the more you're kind of teching towards the spectrum of just playing the Earth Water decks, then the more it's less even Soiree at that point. It's just that deck. And when we're looking at lists, I think you're absolutely right. There's probably a good 25 at least cards that are same across the board.
There's a lot.
Right. I mean,
but the deck is so cool, like Warrior Light, where you can run a lot of tech cards that can catch your opponent off guard. So I think for me, it will flop back and forth between B and C tier, depending on what tech cards are run, what the meta looks like. But if I have to give it a hard tier, to me, it's C. But at the top of the C.
What if they print a Warrior of Light that's strictly Soiree? Like, why not? They love this. They love this archetype for no particular reason.
The deck needs a little bit more full arts, and I'll probably go up a tier.
That's fair. This is another deck near and dear to my heart. As you may remember, this is the one time I've got to play you in tournament. This was 2019 Omaha, if I recall correctly. Ice Lightning. Now, it wasn't this variation, and I think there's a strong argument for either of these either variations of these decks. So I think a lot of Ice Lightning has largely been in the mid-range style, maybe even a little bit more aggressive at times. And I think that was definitely the way to play it earlier on. But as we've kind of got Lightning and as we've kind of got some other things, and if you're following Japanese player over on Twitter, and they're doing a lot of work in Ice Lightning, I really like this being more of a controlled deck. I like pushing this more with like the Bibloses, just more focus on Orphan, Lockdown, Freeze Down cards, focuses on Vincent. It's one of those really good decks for the 7 package. And I think that it's like, I low-key kind of think it's still being slept on, but for the results and variance on the control side of things, it's probably right there next to Soiree and C tier.
I think I would put it in the B tier.
B, okay.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of tools that are very good against the top tier decks, like Ixion, Ramu, either 1 or 3 CP Ramu. Sephiroth's very good. It's got, depending on what version, the heavy discard for the control decks versus like the more aggressive versions. Like I think both are in the same B tier, like both control and mid range. I think they both are fairly good in their own right. Again, you have to kind of make a good meta call of what's the best version to play for that tournament.
Right.
But I do think it's got a lot of answers for a lot of the A and B tier decks. Like Water, like the best thing Water can do is Leviathan, which is like very good versus the deck, but discard is also very good versus Water, right? So depending on how you start, if you need to be heavily aggressive with the Ice Lightning deck and discard the Water's hand, you could slow them down and just win off of pure aggression and discard. Against like the Ice Earth or the Warrior Light decks, freezing their backup, setting up tempo turns, setting up the Biblos with the Dull Freeze into a Sephiroth. Like, I think the skill in Ice Lightning puts it in the B tier. Like, if you're a very good Ice Lightning player, I think you could definitely win a tournament with it.
Yeah, I feel pretty passionate on some of these arguments with that. And I think when we're talking about decks in B tier as well, it's a very solid matchup no matter what way you take it on against FF13.
It's very good for 13.
Yeah, so I think that alone, this argument is probably worth kind of the reconsideration for me to put it in B tier. I do say that the one thing that frustrates me about as an Ice Lightning player at times is that Rydia feels like it just kind of solos the deck at times. Whenever it's just like, okay, kill this Dull thing, Rydia's like, nah, I'm good. React to react. You kind of have to.
You mean Rosa?
Or Rosa, sorry, yeah, Rosa with that one, because you kind of have to overcommit to really get even one forward at times when they're playing the Dull game. But yeah, there's probably a strong argument. I mean, I think it's now. Do we put it on the top of B tier though? Do we feel like competitively speaking, it beats 13? But if you're playing throughout pools, yeah, Fire Lightning 13 feels stronger. But in Top Cut, there's probably an argument for Ice Lightning over it.
Yeah, I think Ice Lightning is higher than 13.
And I would agree that that's probably both variations as well. I'm more likely to play the control variant because I think that's more of a play style I like. Largely, it's mid range, but even if I play mid range, I play very greedy mid ranges, just greedy enough to not be control, but really stuff where I could sit there and play Axe Star and then 15 other colors, and that's kind of where I like to get my bread buttered, so to speak. KP mentions Ice Lightning has very specific answers to cards, which limits what it can do and what it cannot do. Yeah, I would agree. If we're talking about its tools, and they typically are very situational specific, right? You have to wait for them to be dull, or you have to go dull them out of your way yourself. Whereas if we're talking about ease and accessibility of removal, for instance, Une is just bouncing your stuff. Wool's just kind of like tapping it, calling it a day. So I definitely think that talking about a good distinction between B tier and A tier and why these are stronger and not stronger. Ice Lightning is strong and it has plenty of tools, but they're a little bit more situational, right? They're a little bit more of a scalpel, where these ones are a hammer. These can just kind of break your stuff without having to think too hard about it. Next up on the list, we are talking strictly Warriors of Light. I'm spoiling content. Get out of here. You
talk about the Rydia, Ferris.
Yeah, we're talking the tribal Warriors of Light, right? So we got the Ferris one that taps and tops or bottoms a card, those ones. Recently, I think got second at a Japanese tournament, the most recent stream on that. This one's hard. Japan's showing this thing has strength, and this is more. I know Sam Tool has a variation that is less focused on backups. The backup engine is closer to the Earth Water backup line, but the Japanese list was running the Ignises and Arcs as backups to kind of give a little bit more, and Cryal as well to kind of give a little bit more gas for Refia. Right? Yeah. No, KP, I got you. I keep up with the tech, buddy. You're gonna find out how sweaty I am this stream. Yeah, so I like the backup line kind of being a little more accessible because I think KP even mentioned in his stream, if you're playing 3 or 4 forwards, you're kind of just winning most of the time anyway. So I think having those backups really kind of give you a little bit more gas out of that makes a big difference. But I don't know, where does Matt Okimoto think where the Warriors of Light Tribal goes?
I would say I'd put it in the. I might get persecuted for this, but I'm gonna put C tier.
Damn, Japanese Twitter is on fire right now. They're coming for Matt. All right, so C tier, and that feels right. If we're talking our meta though, because we are not Japan meta.
Yeah, I'm specifically focusing more on our meta.
Yeah,
for a lot of these. Yeah,
I'm gonna hard agree with you on this one. I definitely think that where it goes. We'll figure that out in a second. I definitely think that there's an aspect that says that this deck actually has some fun strength, and it's very fun to play. But I've learned that the more fun a meta deck is, the less strong it tends to be in the tier list, unfortunately, to a degree. But yeah, I think right now, if we're talking especially just on American showings, Sam Tools had the best showing so far, and I think Florida was the highest it placed, and that was top 4 or top 8? 8, yeah. So when we're saying that we've only seen one top 8, we've kind of not really seen it much since, to my knowledge, if I'm keeping up with top cuts in my head. Yeah, there's an argument to be said that it's strong, but now I wouldn't personally put it above Soiree. Fire, Ice, FF6. That's a tighter match. I don't know. Does it go? I think it probably goes under, maybe above Leo.
Yeah, that's where I'd put it.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty. What FF6 Fire Ice does and what that deck does is pretty close to the same card advantage wise. I mean, they're both tribal decks per se, right? So kind of makes sense why they got clumped together. And Soiree also is like a pseudo tribal deck, which got clumped together. The only reason like 13 quote unquote tribal didn't get clumped with those is because what that does is extremely unfair compared to what those do. So, but yeah, I think it makes sense to put it there.
So clickbait clip will be tribals are dead, worst tiers, worst of the toughness. More clickbait stuff for next episode. Wind and Wind X decks. This includes Wind Lightning stuff. We saw Ray do some of that piloting this past weekend. We got Storm, etc. And I know this is a wide variation of things. I know Ghoul on a recent thing kind of just called them cast decks. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Is Wind going to ever come back? Mono Water's popular. Wind likes to beat up on water. Is it its time? Do we put it in B tier for that alone? Or is it a C tier no-shower?
I think before seeing future event results based off what we know right now, I'd put it at the top of the C tier.
Okay.
I think Wind does good stuff. It does cool stuff, but it's still like while it does have, in my opinion, slightly favored matchups versus some of the decks in the A and B tier, the 13 matchup is very hard.
Yeah. Back to auto losses.
The Iceline matchup actually isn't the easiest either, in my opinion. So
yeah, I think they have Activate, but I agree.
Also, it gets like kind of pseudo hit by all the Warrior Light decks running Hecaton because you Hecaton Althea. It's like puts the deck pretty behind.
Yep.
So I think there's probably a Wind deck that fits in the A or B tier that just hasn't been figured out yet. Probably Icewind, I would imagine, but yeah.
No love for Wind Lightning. Wind Lightning gainers rise up?
Wind Lightning is fine.
It's kind of bad. Don't lie. It's kind of bad. Like it's
like
got all strong tools.
All the Wind X decks, I'm excluding decks that splash Wind for Warrior Light. All the Wind X decks, I think, are in the C.
Yeah.
Ish tier.
I would agree. I think so. All right. If it's gun to your head, you have to run a Wind deck of some sort at the next Materia Cup you go to. Do you go mono or do you splash?
Icewind.
Icewind. You would. Arc Chaos decks. Let's keep it moving. We're on time. Oh God, I'm sweating. I thought I had more time. You never.
Sorry. Arc Chaos B tier.
B tier. Quick B tier.
Quick B tier. I think it's probably in the middle of the B tier. I think there's so many different variations that are good.
Yeah.
But they do clump your hand a lot, and you can lose just based off of breaking. They're very good against like the Warrior Light decks, not so good against the Mono Water decks. I think in my opinion, there's definitely a tiered version of like not all the Chaos Arc decks are B, some are C. But if we're gonna go with like just a general archetype, I think it's B tier. I would even maybe put it below Ice Earth. Might be the bottom of the B tier, but it's fine where it's at.
Damn, 6 dark cards put to the above. I would say my argument for keeping it right above Ice Earth would be that I think it's a little bit more accessible, and I think that it needs a less experience to be topping over Ice Earth. You may disagree on that, but I think
that's fair.
Yeah, I feel like if you're working through pools, 6 dark cards, sure, but those 6 dark cards, if they're more likely to match up a little bit easier, and you have less kind of to think about with Arc Chaos decks. Ice Earth, you're going to have that control player playing fatigue throughout pools, and I think that's just for that reason. I would probably just say for the mental stack and fatigue alone on it.
Yeah, that's fair.
One Kyle Peters may be shouting out Magissa. How is it pronounced? Don't tell me. Tell me in the comments. Where does this fire beauty go?
Again, I think it's one of those that was probably really good at the start, slowly has fallen off. I mean, all the 5 CP Hecaton decks there's a lot in the A and B tier, right? Mono Water is generally pretty good against it.
KP says below Leo.
I was gonna put it above Leo just because I felt bad, but
no
love
for Leo.
You can put it. It's definitely bottom of the C tier, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wouldn't fight this at all. I think based on prevalence alone, if I've learned anything, it's that I play bad decks. KP, same though. Have you seen my Kieran deck that I ran at Xanarchan?
Well, this is slightly skewed, right? Because both the Leo and Magisa decks were better prior to this video. Right?
Yes.
This data is strictly being pulled after the last event, in my opinion, and a few store champs. If we did this before Kansas, I think a lot of these tiers change. So I think it's.
And we do this after Texas, it could change all over again too, right?
Good, yeah.
We get 4 weeks of relevancy for our knowledge on this, Matt, and then it all gets washed away by a new deck.
Yeah, like I would have put Magisa in the A tier for Florida, but I would not put it A tier now.
Yeah,
So
that's
like, it. Sorry, not sorry, KP. You run bad decks. I'm just kidding.
Where's Verstale? That's
In the trash.
where it belongs with the rest of those heavy cards. Just play. You want to play expensive cards? Play Arc Chaos, bro. It's the same thing. The FF7 packages. This includes Avalanche and Cloudpod. I know those are two very different decks objectively, but
Yeah.
Cloudpod's been a little bit more popular recently, and I do love some of the cheese behind that Barrett combo.
I think it can surprise people that don't know what a deck does.
Oh god, yeah.
But it's basically like Yuffie or bust against a lot of decks, and it's just like, I mean, you got the Barrett stuff, which is cool, but I think for me it's a C tier deck, unfortunately. Probably the bottom of the C tier.
Yeah, I mean, something's got to be at the bottom, and it shouldn't be Leo, for God's sakes. That card.
I mean, it might be better than Magisa, but we'll do that.
You think? Well, okay. I'll give you this. I think that if we get into a meta that turn 4 onwards is more heavy than turns 1 through like 2 through 3, so to speak. As the game goes on, I definitely give this to FF7 stuff, but I think Magisa's turns 1 through 4 are just so much stronger, and that's kind of where a lot of these games are really being decided. Whether it's like you're dead or I've got my backups online. And for that reason, I think it probably lands over FF7 because it's got to kind of do a little bit of both. It's got to get backups in order, but it's also kind of got to survive, and then it's got a Yuffie. And there's such an argument about Yuffie in general right now. It's like, how good is Yuffie? Yes, but also,
Yep.
So, yeah, I think it's probably right at the bottom of C tier. I wouldn't fight that, because Leo gamers rise up. Put money on this one. I don't want to kill too much of your time, but we got a little bit of time left. So I do want to check in really quickly. What are some of your thoughts about some missing decks? Obviously, for me, I was looking at like cards and decks that don't feel like that they've really been shown up or make sense. I kind of just have ... Earthwind, I wanted to ask you specifically because you're an Earthwind gamer at your soul. Where's all the Earthwind, Matt? Did you just stop playing and therefore it doesn't exist? What's up?
Well, Earthwind wasn't a super popular deck in general in the first place, but there's just Wind and Earth didn't, the archetype Wind Earth didn't get a lot of juice lately, in my opinion. So it's still doing what it's been doing for the last few opuses, which is not as good as what all these new decks are doing. So I think I haven't been able to figure out a deck, but I'm not the best deck builder. There might be other people who like are able to figure it out, just haven't got it out there for other people to like take a look at it and make a sick deck. But yeah, I don't even know if I'd put it on the tier right now. I think you can add good Earth and good Wind cards, right? And like maybe you can top cut, but like what it's gonna do is not gonna be as good as A and B tier decks right now, in my opinion. Unless you add like Arc Chaos to it or something. Like you add stuff that the A and B tier decks are already doing.
You have to fall into one of the already
archetypes. But if we're talking strict Earthwind, I just don't think it got too much.
Yeah.
And then Icewind, I mean, we already talked about that one. Right. I would put Icewind probably at the top of the C tier.
That matchup with Fire Lightning is just so hard.
Yeah, and then the Mobius, I'm not really a fan of that archetype. I haven't really personally tried it, so I don't have a good opinion on it. I do think it's worth mentioning. I do think there is some versions of good monster decks that exist that people have not explored. I know, what's his name? I want to say Tori. Yeah, he played a little different monster deck for Kansas and did pretty well.
Yeah,
I think using that as a shell to build upon to make another monster deck would be a very possibly good idea. Maybe it gets slightly hit by the fact that Mono Water did well, so there's going to be more monster hate. But what the monster route right now is kind of pretty powerful because there's not a lot of answers to monsters. And a lot of your board wipes, you just don't activate your monsters so after you board wipe, right? Especially in Earth. So, and board wipes are very strong right now. So I think there's probably a monster deck out there, probably in the B tier somewhere that's just hidden that no one really knows about. Unfortunately, I won't really have time to figure it out. I'm pretty busy the next few weeks. I'm not going to Texas. Got a lot of stuff to do. But if I was going, I would probably work on something like a monster version. I was working on a deck prior to Kansas that JP sent me. It's called Bulbasaur Control. It uses the Aster. Astro
Yeah.
Protoflorian.
Yeah.
And it seems like a really fun deck, but like I said, it needs a lot of work.
Mhm.
That's the deck I would probably be working on to try to play at Kansas because it looks like a really fun deck. But I don't know if I would be able to get it there in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that there is a lot of I'd say like a few decks that are unexplored. But I think this is probably the general meta going to the rest of the set.
I guess some closing thoughts on this episode would be, other than the monster stuff, is there something that you would shout out to say, like, you know what, I think this is unexplored, and maybe I don't personally got the time, but I think I would love to see like one of these ambitious deck builders get behind it.
I mean, there's more variations of the Chaos Arc decks. There
Sure.
might be an Icewind Chaos Arc deck. But again, that'd probably fall. A lot of the decks, in my opinion, will be in the B tier where they could potentially or like likely to win if the deck is good. But more than likely, if there's not enough time, it falls into the C tier because they're just not fully fleshed out.
Right.
There's probably some variation of a Wind deck that can at least fall into the B tier that's not been figured out yet. Wind's got too many good cards to potentially be there. Just on its own, like you can go Wind plus another element that gains something, not specifically Wind Earth, but like Wind plus something else.
Right.
Like the realm is kind of unexplored. I don't know if people played like the Ice realm, Ice Water realm, and like Wind Ice. That might be like a pretty unexplored territory. I think Alex was doing that when he was here. It's a pretty cool idea to like
I know that he'd
double cast summons,
putting in Storm and double casting on Alexander's and stuff like that, which feels great. But then you draw 4 cards and you don't resolve your opponent's board at times, and that feels bad. You're like,
I think there's outside of monster decks, and then outside of just taking the existing decks and tweaking them for the meta, nothing off the top of my head really stands out. Other than maybe a monster deck of some sort.
Speed round, last question. What do you think is going to be rising up, if you will, into, let's say, Texas, right? If we just had a mono water meta, do we feel like that the mono water counter is coming out, or if you're one step ahead of the meta, as you often are, Matt? What's your prediction? Because you're not going to Texas, so you can throw the gun into the middle of the floor and say, I don't know, figure it out, guys.
I think the current list we have is like pretty solid of what to expect at Texas. I think there will I think 70 to 80% of the field will be the A and B tier decks, and then the other 20% will be like C tier decks and random stuff.
Yep.
So I mean, again, if it depends what your goal is, right? If your goal is to just top cut, I think 13 is hands down the best deck to play. If your goal is to win, I think you have to figure out a very teched Earth Water, Rydia, Soya, backup Rydia, the Soya Warriorlight deck. Even Ford Rydia is probably fine. But one of those decks, heavily teched out for the meta, will probably be the highest candidate to win. 13 to probably just focus on top cutting, because there's a lot of invited players that go to these events. Just making top 16, you might even get an invite, right? So if that's your goal, 13 is probably the best to get to that point. I do think there'll probably be some number of Ice Earth, Art Chaos, and Iceline gamers that make top cut. Not a lot, maybe a hand, like three total out of all those. But I think expect 40% of the top cut to be 4-color Warriorlight, unless people decide to change things up. There'll probably be 1 to 3 spooky decks, some random like monster deck or something, maybe a mono water deck that got less slightly changed. But yeah, that's my opinion, I guess, on that.
Right on. All right, Matt. Well, as we start to close out the episode, where can everybody catch you at? What are the plugs? Are we gonna ever see more Meta Potion videos? What's up with that channel? Where's the subscriber content?
I've been lazy, not gonna lie. I want to try to stream my locals more often. It's just kind of a pain in the butt to set everything up because I'm lazy, not gonna lie. I mean, I could do it. It takes 5 minutes, but I just been kind of lazy. I want to try to do it more often. I kind of want to start doing more content, rather for this game or another game. I just kind of want to start doing a little bit more content. But
you're gonna boost up One Piece all of a sudden?
No.
Matt, it's not that hard to top in One Piece Okimoto.
No, it would be Lurkana. I'd probably want to dip in that a little bit. But I'm waiting for the entire game to come out before I decide what my plan is for that. There's not enough out for me to really like. I'm not the kind of person that's just gonna make a video to talk about one card that got revealed. Like, I want everything out. I want to see a structure,
right,
type of thing. So but yeah, I'm always down for this random one-off stuff like this, or if you want to hit me up whenever.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just
I'm lazy to do the video, but I have no problem talking about stuff that you have questions for.
if somebody sets it up for Matt, he's good to go. But it's getting there and doing any of the networking. No, I think that's been a boon to me, being a golden retriever of a personality, that I'm like, I just like people. I like talking with folks. I love geeking out about this. So the ability to just be like, hey, let's do content, as an excuse to sit there and hang out, because me and Matt are. Where I'm effectively a California local, as everybody else thinks, as I wear my life jersey, and they don't know I'm actually on the East Coast. We're burning out here. Please help us.
Yeah.
Our air quality is not good, but
so stay inside.
Yeah. I took one walk earlier, and my literal insides feel like it's lava right now. Do not recommend. Don't walk outside if you're on the East Coast. I'm not actually in California, although I will walk and talk with them, and I will blend in like a chameleon. That's our show. Make sure to check out whatever next content. I don't know. I never planned this stuff ahead of time. Matt actually just said, make this content. And I said, okay, come on in. And he's like, okay.
Literally what happened.
Literally what it was. But it's an excuse that you know what? I haven't got to monopolize your time like this. I don't get enough time to just sit in one-on-one and chat and shoot the shit with you. So I've appreciated your time. It's been lovely to be able to chat with you like this, Matt.
I think it's been awesome. And I think more people need to reach out. I think like if anyone asks like the best advice I could give is just talk to people. I mean, sure, there might be some stuff people can't talk about because they want to hide it, but like most people, in my opinion, are pretty open to discuss most things. I think just talking to people just helps expand your card knowledge, expand your your lines of play knowledge, like everything. I think if that's something that you want to do is improve on, is just talk to people.
Yeah. But we're gamers and we play TCG players, so we're not as social.
We don't socialize, yeah.
We don't socialize. Why can't this be online? I would just type it at you, and I would feel a little more confident about that. But
it's just you just gotta what's it called? Rip off the Band-Aid once, right? Once you rip off the Band-Aid, you're like, oh, they're a normal person. I can talk to them. And they're like, yes, I'm a normal person. You can talk to me. And then you guys are good.
There's a curve if you go over 30, right? And I think this is my mentality, right? It's like, once I know you're over 30, I'm like, bro, you have random aches and pains like I do. I don't care if you're topping. And you have kids too, so you're just like you're mentally 40 and 18 at the same time.
Correct,
so I was just like, brother, you're somewhere in this range with me. We're all right. Yeah. You know what? My knees don't work the same as well as they used to. I would probably find one of these gripes that you share with me. So we are players behind that. So if you see Matt, go say hi. I always like spreading the narrative that he knows everything about everyone. So when there's dinner time, I go right up to Matt Okimoto. I'm like, where's dinner? And he's like, I don't know. And he's lying. He just didn't tell me where.
I usually just follow wherever people, because usually, unless it's local, I'm just whoever my ride takes me to. I'm like, oh, I don't want to pay for an Uber, so wherever you're going, I'm going. That's
right. There was manicures and pedicures at Kansas, and
there was.
I kind of feel like I missed out on that. I'm not gonna lie. I really wish I'd kind of. But the Cincy boys weren't having it. We're like, we're not doing manicures and pedicures. Anyway, guys, that's our show. Make sure to tune in. I will probably make more content. I don't know. Matt's welcome to join as always, but I'll probably put one out after Texas to see how I do on that. Wish me luck. I need to qualify. Oh my God, I still haven't got that slot.
Well, if you don't get it in Texas, you'll get it.
I'm getting it in Arizona. Yeah. I'm getting in Arizona. Store championship, I can win a store championship.
Well, you can just get it in Texas and then just mess around at Arizona.
Bro, I'm running Leo at one of these things, but I really want to qualify first, and then I can start.
I would save Leo for a store champ.
Yeah, that's probably the case. So if you're going to be in Arizona store championship, I'm not running Leo. Don't tech against me. I'm not that good. It's not worth it, bro. Just play 13 or don't play 13. Actually, don't.
I think I'm going to the Arizona one.
Arizona, yeah, you're going to Arizona. You said see you there on Rainey's comment.
Yeah, but sometimes you say see you there, we don't always see you there.
Bro, how you guys see you there, not see you there? What do you mean?
True. Yeah.
All right, guys. We will catch you next time. Have a good one. Good luck at the next tournaments. And if you got spicy tech, let me know below. Just message me, bro. I'm trying to geek. Let me figure it out. That's it. Okay, bye, guys.
Later, guys.